much, Prism. How we doing? Okay, here we go. So, hello, my name is Dr. Timaree, and I'm going to rant at you about phrases that you're probably misusing. I want to start with a preface. It's a very big caveat, and that is I'm not interested in policing your vocabulary or your grammar. That's not the point. If you can convey an idea from one person to another, that's effective communication. That's what matters. But why do we codify language? Why do we have dictionaries? Why do we have rules of grammar? And that is just because language is a piece of our culture, and when we're discussing something, we want to make sure we're talking about the same thing, that we have a shared idea of what we're discussing. And so because language is the most malleable part of our culture, it changes really quickly. And for some people, that becomes very scary and they become really rigid about it. But for other people, they're just like, we're just gonna keep moving with this. I'm somewhere in the middle, and there are some things that I've just had to give up. So some of the things I'm not gonna fight about. So for example, deep-seated. That is originally seat like a chair, but people will sometimes say seed like a seed in the ground. Either way, it's a metaphor. You get the idea. I don't really need to fight about that, right? It doesn't really matter. But there are some things that are a little bit harder to get rid of, like literally. The word for a very long time meant one thing, and then people started to use it as its opposite, and they did so frequently that the dictionary now includes both of those definitions. And despite my best efforts, I'm going to have to deal with that. But there are some things that I think we can fix that are just like small little deals. So like sneak peek, that's just a spelling issue. Peek with 2 E's is like to see. Peek with an A is like the top of a mountain. When we talk about casting a show, someone might say it's been casted. You can just say cast, it's actually shorter, it's faster. Sometimes you can say, like, I could care less. Well, if you could care less, then there's less that you could care. That means actually that you care quite a big deal. So if you want to convey a lack of care, you can say, I couldn't care less, and that would be technically the right way to say it. But again, none of this really matters. It doesn't fucking matter. And the reason I started this talk is because I was mad at how many erudite people would misuse the phrase begs the question. People will say begs the question, and what they mean is it prompts me to ask, it leads one to wonder. And begs the question is actually the name of a logical fallacy. It's a logical fallacy where somebody puts the conclusion in the premise. And why did this upset me? Because there's lots of ways to say, leads me to wonder, but there's only one name for this fucking logical fallacy. And then I thought about it, and I was like, they should rename the fucking fallacy, because it's confusing and people aren't using it that way, and most people know logical fallacies anyway. And so through the process of making this talk, I had this huge fucking realization, and I got over my shit. But there are still some hills I'm gonna die on. And a lot of them are technical terms. And it's because there are areas where these words really do fucking matter. For example, technical terms. There are industries where people have a whole lot of information and they want to have nuanced, ethical, and legal conversations around them, and if we're using those terms out of context, we can't have those conversations smartly. So like, artificial intelligence and machine learning, that's not just every time a computer does something smart. Alpha wolves, the guy who created that term deeply fucking regrets it, because not only is it not accurate to wolf hierarchies, it's definitely not applicable to human social dynamics, and anybody who says alpha males is probably being a douchebag. Method is a series of exercises that an actor can do that allow them to get into a space where they will respond organically to something. It doesn't mean you stay in character for the entirety of production, that it's okay to fucking punk your coworkers, Jared fucking Leto. And then perhaps one of the worst examples of something that has been appropriated and distilled to the point of lack of utility is woke. This is black vernacular that has been around since the 1860s, and it's about staying aware about racial injustice. And now people just use it to mean anything they don't fucking like. So there are other words that we're misusing, not because we don't understand them, but because the thing isn't a thing. Stockholm syndrome isn't a thing. A Swedish psychologist came up with this idea because it was easier for him to come up with this idea that someone would be brainwashed into liking their hostage taker more than the idea they might be scared of the police. And so they came up with this concept where these hostages are brainwashed and they're having this bond of trauma. And so people use this phrase, but that's not because they don't understand it. And one of the things that happens is when these clinical terms get taken out into the mainstream, people who don't understand it then repeat them. And another good example would be other psychology terms, like trauma bond. It sounds like it's a bond over shared trauma. It's actually specifically a clinical phrase for the cycle between an abuser and their victim. Another term that gets often misused, imposter syndrome. It's not just when you're feeling nervous about something. It's specifically high-achieving, credentialed people, usually women and people of color, who feel like they're going to be found out as frauds despite the fact they know what they're doing. There are words that have real fucking meanings with real fucking impacts, and if you use them outside of their clinical setting, then they lose their application, and we aren't talking about the same thing anymore. Abuse, narcissism, grooming, good examples. Good examples. They have actual clinical meaning, and if you don't know that, we're going to get really confused on what we're talking about. So what was the point of this whole conversation? Well, one thing is, I actually learned a lot doing this class. I changed my mind, and I got one big fucking stick out of my ass. And the other thing is, I just want to reiterate that language, again, is about our shared cultural understanding and the things that matter to us. So if something matters to us, let's just be very conscientious about how we discuss it.